Here on location at Metroflex Gym with Brian Dobson. Let's get into this. Tell us how the gym sort of started off and when it started.
Okay. Well, the gym really was always a dream of mine to have a gym. Throughout the late 70s and early 80s, I was competing as a bodybuilder and powerlifter. And early 80s is when the big corporate gyms started coming around. They didn't really like us in there. They didn't let us use chalk. Took all the good bars out, replaced them with the chrome bars, removed the squat racks, things like that. And there was the really hardcore gyms were few and far between. And I started seeing there was a need for this, and especially if I wanted to keep training hard and reach my goals as a competitor. I had to start my own thing, and that's really how Metroflex Gym started.
Okay. So how long did it start to start getting some bigger time guys in there besides yourself?
Okay. When we started here, we had no one of any significance as far as great athletes. We had a powerlifting team. We did well as a team, mainly because we had girls on it. Back then, very few girls competed, so they all got first place. So our rankings our points were high. Outside of myself, most of these guys were not couldn't get anywhere near the top 100, but it was still fun. It created that hardcore atmosphere, the family, of iron of competitors, camaraderie among us all, people setting goals and reaching goals. And as it grew, we realized that it was more for me. Bodybuilding was going to be more where it's at, because people even back then, it was more about how they looked, what they wanted to look like. Of course, powerlifter, I looked good, I guess. I was in the 220-pound class mainly, so I was still pretty lean. I had abs, but nothing like when I competed as a bodybuilder. So started competing as a bodybuilder, and then we ended up, when Ronnie came around, he ended up, bringing us notoriety.
When was it, kind of get into that, when was that and how did that happen?
That was, I believe, 1990. We had an officer here that was telling about this rookie cop and how freaky he was and just messed around in the weight room. And I said, well, bring him down here, man. And really back then, I had a hard time keeping training partners, mainly because of the leg workouts. Not that I was Tom Platz or Branch Warren or anything like that, but I trained very hard on legs. And generally, these guys would do good till they went through a leg workout with me, and then, they didn't come back. So Ronnie came down here. Obviously his potential was immediately obvious. I mean, the guy had veins poking through a basic training sweatsuit, legs and arms. Back then, he was pretty much equal to me on everything. I could beat him on everything at first, and then probably within 6 months, I never beat him on anything ever again. And Ronnie was very competitive. He didn't like to get beat either, and just trained very hard. He didn't really think he wanted to be a bodybuilder, but I said, that's fine, just train me, it's gonna be great. I go, you work on me, I won't even charge you. And but eventually, of course, in this environment, people are like, my gosh, how big are your arms, blah, blah, blah. You need to compete, and we just kept pushing him on that. And we did the Mr. Texas contest, was his first contest. I did it as well. I was in the open, he was in the novice. I got second in the open, and as soon as Ronnie hit his front double bicep pose for the novice, people went wild. And basically that was the beginning of his career. And I mean, you saw a smile across his face, and after that, you never had to push him to enter a contest ever again.
How long did it take him to go pro after that?
He made pro within 1 year, which was unheard of. A lot of people are like, well, it was easy for him to win his pro card because he didn't have to go up against so many people like now. But
easier now, they give them out like they're candy.
Yeah, exactly. And his was, back in the day, they had the Mr. Universe was like the crown jewel kind of amateur bodybuilding. Well, they started drug testing it over in Europe, and a lot of these Americans would go over there, and they probably would have won, but then they'd fail the test. So for that particular time, the story Ronnie told me is that he was in the room with all these other guys who became top pros later on, and I think Ronnie got fourth in the nationals that year, but they had this as an additional pose down, and they said if you fail the test here, you'll get disqualified for the NPC for 2 years. If you go over to Europe and fail, you'll be disqualified for life because they footed the bill for all that. So everybody got up and left the room. Ronnie didn't have to pose down. He was the only heavyweight left over in the class. So he got his pro card there, or not pro card, but chance to compete for a pro card, without a actual pose down. When he went to Poland, he had to go up against all the top Europeans and all the other people, and he won, and he was drug tested, and he passed the test.
Wow. So what's the difference in going pro, since we're on the subject? Something it's easier, and we're saying it's harder. Explain the difference. A lot of people watching don't actually know the rules of bodybuilding.
Okay.
So
I would say, like for people like Branch Warren, who had to probably compete 12 times at the national level before he got a pro card, to now, it's still pretty hard for a bodybuilder, top 2 in each class at these upper shows, get a pro card. But if you go in and it's a classic physique now or physique, top 5 in each class get a pro card. But, so it's kind of like, you can get, maybe not quite this bad of a comparison, but, I used to compare it to being a Cub Scout to being a Navy SEAL. Somebody like Branch, really had to work hard, had to go back, had to get, fight adversity over and over again, and never give up. You go 8, 10, 12 times, and you don't win, it's hard to keep going back because it's not a cheap sport. It's very expensive. Just to enter these shows at that big level is it's quite a cost, man. Then you got to fly out there. You got to take a few days off. The tanning, all the stuff. It's a commitment, and it's not easy. And just all the supplements, the food. Bodybuilding is not it's not a poor man's sport, that's for sure.
So what's the difference in what you've seen people? Okay, obviously good genetics, that's a given if you're a pro.
Yep.
But what's the difference you've seen people that made it that have attempted to make it and didn't?
Well, it's just having that heart to never give up. It's. I've seen guys go to some of these tough shows. When I look at them, I think, well, he should have got a pro card. He should have won. But a lot of times, it's almost like, you got to prove that you want it, man. You got to. Very rarely will a guy go the first year and just win it. Very, very, very rarely. You just gotta. You gotta have that heart and desire, man, and just never give up, man, and just keep especially in bodybuilding. It's like I said, it's very, very hard. The bikini gals. They're awesome, of course, and everybody trains hard, but it's just a much harder road in the bodybuilding. Over the last few years, they started increasing it from just the class winner to everybody gets a top 2. Back in the day, like you had to win the overall at every show outside the nationals to get a pro card. And then you'd have like 4 pros a year maybe. Now you have 20 in bodybuilding, 100 in physique, and so on and so forth. But back in Ronnie's day, it was much harder. I tried to make it, I didn't make it. But wasn't from lack of trying.
What other type of athletes have trained here besides like strength and bodybuilders? Are they Oleg Tatarov and other people?
Well, one of the funnest
crazies in the area that you may not know before YouTube.
One of the funnest, really, for me was having Oleg Tatarov here. He was, I believe, it was UFC 7 champion. This is back when the UFC really didn't have hardly any rules. There was no time limit, no rounds.
No biting, no eye gouging.
Yeah, no biting, no eye gouging, no fish hook. But. He had to go up against Tank Abbott in the finals. You would fight multiple times to get to the finals. So, winning your first few fights easily was a big plus when you got to that championship round. And he went up against Tank Abbott. Back then it was very rare to have a UFC, maybe 1 or 2 a year. So we always had big watching parties because we were all huge fans of it. And he ended up going up against Tank. Tank, of course, had pulverized the guy he'd been up him in the previous rounds. Tank was known for one-punch knockout power. Very strong man. I seen him. It wasn't a strict bench, but he did 585 for I think 3 or 4 reps, something like that, bouncing it off his chest, which is still incredible. Raw, no bench shirt. Just no nothing. Just look like you just woke up, went over there and laid on the bench. Right. But anyway, Oleg survived the first 5-6 minute onslaught, and they were in Colorado Springs, so both were getting winded. Oleg was the exact same size as me back then. He was about 6 foot, 220 pounds. Tank was probably about 285, 6 foot or something like that. And anyway, they went at it, and Oleg ended up getting him in a rear naked choke at 15 minutes, I believe, and won the fight. So it was really cool. And he, now he's out in Hollywood making movies. He plays bad Russian guys in flicks.
So what's some of the craziest things you've seen here?
Here, man, I mean, probably the craziest thing is from some of these freaks that just wander around homeless that show up here. We had one guy, we used to call him the meth ninja, because he would like shadow box creatures that weren't really there in front of him, and he actually first came in here acting very normal. Kind of the same story most of them give you about, just need a few bucks. I said, all right, well, not that even now after being here 30 years, I'm not above taking the trash out. But I let him take the trash out, gave him a few dollars, and anyway, he ended up became a fixture here for a while then, and he would just start showing up randomly, influenced by various drugs and alcohol, and he would, beg for a couple dollars to do a backflip. I'll do a backflip and blah, blah, blah. And then, I'm like, nah, it's cool, man, and he actually was a very muscular guy. He had really good calves, which was, it was just kind of waste of potential, man. Poor old guy, man. And one time he was doing that in here, and got one of the members, gave him $3 or something, and he did a backflip, hit his head on the dumbbell rack. Bled all over the place. I wrapped his head up in a towel, and I was actually going to church that night, and I felt so bad. And he was wandering down the middle of Cooper Street, almost getting hit by cars, and I turned around to go pick him up, take him to the hospital, and one of our members, thank God, stopped and picked him up and took him to the hospital. But he ended up ODing on heroin a couple years back, and we lost the old meth ninja. But he was definitely one of the characters. Some of the people that have worked here have been pretty crazy too.
Yeah, I'm more the people. I guess I was talking the gym context, but yeah, he was crazy.
Yeah. Of course, we had Big Rich, the Terminator. Rich is a lot of fun, man. Rich was a big-time power lifter, a semi-pro football player, just a big, strong man, tremendous grip strength. Started doing Thai boxing with me back in probably 1990. I would take the lessons, and then whatever we learned, I would try to teach to Rich. He kicked extremely hard. He punched extremely hard, still can. He's probably early 50s now, and can still hit with tremendous power. Had a different type of bone density than normal people. He and another gentleman named Chad Stevens would kick these power racks back here, and this is not like round metal. It's like angled iron metal, and maybe not full power, but hard enough to dang sure hurt you, and certainly to snap a bone in half. And they would quite regularly have workouts on the power cage, man, and just tee off on it. Yeah, and they'd spar in the parking lot. Yeah, he and I started that years ago, and we used to have a lot of fun out there. As I got older, I don't know, I got too slow really to mess with him. It was too easy for him to hit me, and we had a lot of battles out there in the parking lot, and he would just do a lot of crazy stunts, man. He'd swing sledgehammers with two hands. I believe if you go on the archives on muscular development,
we got it up here too. I copied it off there.
Okay, yeah. You can see one real, he liked getting hit, man. Anyway, we had. It was actually one of the first times we ever had a film crew here from MD, and they had some strange guys as their assistants that were, would hold the lights and such. And one guy looked a lot like Marilyn Manson. And when Rich came in to work out that day, this kid was here. He kind of walked by, and he had the big logs in his ear, which was here in Texas. We hadn't seen that yet. And when Rich saw it, he pretty much just wanted to snap this cat's neck. And I was like, no, man. I mean, this is actually going to be really good for the gym. You know, they're covering branch, and you know they're gonna put a whole magazine article is going to be about us. You know, and the hardcore atmosphere, etc. And he was so fired up about it. I mean, he left because I think he would have probably killed this kid. And when the next day when they were in here filming, I just told them, I said, man, one of my old buddies was about to snap old, you know, Marilyn Manson's neck over there, and they're like, what? Why? You know, and I said, well, because he looks weird, man. You know, he's different. So, and I told him some of his stunts that he does, and so they asked if he would do them when he came in to work out. I said, well, we'll see. So he put on a little show for them, kicked the cage. Actually, I think he kicked the decline bench, but it had about 300 pounds on it, and it went sliding across the floor some, and then he used to like he would just let me tee off on him. I mean, full power tie kicks into his rib cage, which, you know, to me it felt really cool for me to just have an open shot like that and tee off on him. And but he would take it, man. And then I mean, stuff that would break a normal person's ribs, I promise you, man. And then you know, he just like, go ahead, give me one, Colonel. You know, and then you know, I pop him in the jaw, man. I mean, and he'd take that too, man. And Rich was a lot of fun, man. He moved away from this area now, so we just see him every once in a while now. But yeah, we got about 3 hours of war stories to tell every time Rich comes around.
Then we had Ray Woody.
Ray Woody was another one. Ray was quite a character. He was I mean, he was a character back in the day, man. I mean, before the gym even started, I remember he was just kind of a young, overweight kid, and I met him when I was a teenager, and he was also a teenager, and you know, he made up some big numbers how much he could bench press, and not that I was a great bench press champion, but I could do probably about 40 pounds back then. So I made him work out with me, and we found out that he couldn't even do 225, and, you know, compared to his stories, and you know, but to his credit, probably about 5-6 years later, I started hearing stories about him around the grapevine, how big he got and how strong he got, and I used to have a buddy of mine that was a security guard at an apartment complex, and he got his apartment for free. He was an ex-Army Ranger, been in Vietnam and everything. This is back in, I guess, probably early 80s, and he was having trouble with some of these cowboys at the apartment complex. It was over in Fort Worth, and you know, he had told me a little bit about it, and then I didn't realize that Ray was kind of part of that cowboy mafia gang at the time. But me and this fella had been out actually shooting guns that day, and part of the reason was because he wanted to touch up his skills just in case he had to have a shootout with these characters. And he worked in the nightclub with me. He worked the door. I was a bartender, and because there's so much more money in working in the bar. And of course, I'd still get to have fun and get in fights with everybody and stuff like that if the fights broke out. But he ended up taking a shower, and I was just waiting. I was going to jump in the shower and go to work, and all of a sudden there's somebody pounding on the door, and I look out the peephole, and back then, and I think it was called WWF back then, there was a pro wrestler called King Kong Bundy. And I swear I'm looking out there and I go, man, King Kong Bundy is out here outside beating on this door, you know, because there's this giant bald-headed guy. And back then, white people didn't shave their head, and black people didn't shave their heads either back then. But there's a giant white dude with a shaved head out there pounding on the door. And I open the door, and he knows me. And I'm like, how the hell does King Kong Bundy know me? And he's like, see, you're still a damn mirror monkey, Dobson. And I'm like, what? You know, and then I recognized him, and it was Big Ray, and he called bodybuilders mirror monkeys because, you know, he didn't respect them. And I said, well, as a matter of fact, I'm powerlifting now, and I go, I just won my first meet. He's like, what did you total? And I think I totaled like 1620 or something like that, which, you know, was respectable for a 220-pound guy, you know, basically with no gear. I mean, we had suits back then that would give you like 20 pounds on your squat maybe, and no bench shirts, nothing like that. But anyway, I was pretty proud of it. And then he's like, well, you ain't shit till you do 2,000, which back then I think Bill Casper and a few others were the only ones who went over 2,000. And I was like, well, I guess you ain't shit then, man. Of course, then, you know, the other Cowboys back up. Oh, it's fixing to be a battle of the Titans here. And I'm looking at, Ray actually weighed right at about 400 pounds back then, but he still had a V shape. He was just a giant, 6'4", 400. And anyway, I'm like, oh crap, man. But of course, I wasn't afraid to fight back then either. And I was like, well, here we go, man. And then next thing I know, in the background, I hear a sound of a 12-gauge pump shotgun, and I'm turning there, and old Joe's standing there with a towel wrapped around his waist. He goes, there ain't going to be no fight. And he goes, come on in, everybody. We're going to have a drink. And I'm like, thank God. I go, that's probably not a good idea, man. And then that actually escalated into a fight argument between Ray and one of the other Cowboys, who was also a bad MF. And he was a tough son of a bitch, too, man. We called him the Dog. And Ray hated the Cowboys. The Dog didn't, so he picks up for some reason there was one of those hammers you tenderize meat with laying on the living room table, and he picked it up and threw it at Ray's head and missed him by about an inch, and it went all the way through the drywall. And all these guns we've been shooting were laying on this table. And I remember Ray grabbed I don't remember what it was, I think it was a .357, man. He grabbed a revolver, grabbed it, jumps up, and he's gonna kill him now. And, there's no telling what kind of drugs these guys were on back then, because, methamphetamine was the king. And Ray would literally take, 50 to 100 Dianabol pills a day back then, and considered that was, that's what you did when you were a man,
Put them on top of pizzas.
Yeah, and just boom, anyway, he jumped up, and all those guns were unloaded, and I had my .45, and it was loaded. It was in my saddlebags. I used to ride a motorcycle, and I'd have my saddlebags I'd carry into work and I remember pulling that .45 out and put those guns down, put that gun down, Ray, and he looked at me, and I'm thinking, man, if I have to shoot this dude, no judge is going to convict me. But anyway, thank God that didn't come to that, and put the guns down. I loaded up my bag, and I told Joe I'd see him at work, and I left. And there's probably another hour's worth of stories that go with that, but eventually Ray and I became very dear friends again, up until the day he passed away a few years ago. He literally went from one end of being the meanest outlaw I know, pretty much, to becoming a ordained a pastor, and really made a complete turnaround, man. And I miss him, man. He was a great man, and he lived larger than life. He was one of them Paul Bunyan type characters. He didn't do anything at 60 or 70 miles an hour. Whatever Ray did, it was 120 mile an hour, man. So he lived big, and sometimes when you live like that, you don't live a long time. And I think he was 55 when he passed away, man. But we love you, Ray, man.
So on another lighter subject, kind of finish off this first round. What do you think's the difference between how you train bodybuilders and how you train like yourself? Because I know you train similar, versus the so-called gurus,
right?
That are,
we receive a lot of criticism for the way we train.
What about for the titles?
Yeah, but we have some guys now that have lifted a long time. I take nothing from them. Like, let's say Dexter Jackson, for instance. Here's a guy that's a tremendous bodybuilder, looks fabulous, but pretty much in his training articles basically talks about not lifting that hard, not that heavy, and doing very strict. And obviously if the plan worked out well for him. I take nothing from the guy. He won the Olympia. He's won so many pro shows, and he's always a contender in any show he's in. But for us here, that style never really worked. We always lifted very heavy, or as heavy as you could. Sometimes, everybody criticizes, hell, Dexter Jackson probably gets criticized on the internet by people. Everybody has the internet police or form police or whatever you want to call them, man. It's so ridiculous. They'll look at doing 4 or 5, 15 times on the incline, and then come up with some reason why he's doing it wrong. And these guys can't bench 135 for 5 or something like that. you know. But you know, when the guy's winning Arnold Classic titles, you know, obviously it's working for him. You know, the style we use here is very explosive. You know, some people call it cheating. You know, to me, cheating is relative. If you, I'll take for example a guy I trained a few years back. You know, he'd been trained by a very well-known guy over in Dallas. This kid probably had 14-inch arms. Been training with this guy 4 years. First workout I did with me, he wanted to do arms. Well, you know, I load up a 25-pound plate on each side of the easy curl bar, which, you know, I mean, I've got women that can do that. And he said, well, you know, why so much weight? I go, man, that ain't nothing, dude. You know, you can do more than that. You know, and you know, he started trying to do it super strict. Well, he couldn't do it. I said, freaking explode that shit, man. Fucking, you know, put a little ass in it, man. You know, heave it. You know, it's okay. You know, and then, well, my trainer said, you know, like, okay, how many titles your trainer won? How many world champions has your trainer trained? 0. You know, how big are his arms? You know, back then my arms were probably close to 20 inches or something. And to me, cheating, you know, there's a point where it goes too far, of course. But like, you know, like you when you see Arnold back in the old days, I remember when he's doing some weight on his straight bar curls, you know, he's putting a little bit into it, man. He calls them cheat curls, and you know, the way you look at it is to me is, you know, what kind of pump are you getting? What's it feel like? You know, are you able to make gains? You know, go stronger. You know, go more.
The cheating you're talking about is to make it harder, not easier.
Exactly.
That's the key point, right?
Exactly.
It's to go harder.
Exactly.
A lot of these people are cheating to make it easier, and that's not the point.
You know, and of course, a lot of people will criticize because they'll look at Ronnie now. You know, I mean, Ronnie's experienced a lot of injuries. I think the reason Ronnie's down right now is not so much the heavy lifting, but I think the surgeries have really hurt him. This last surgery for his back, before he had that, Ronnie was weighing probably 285. I guarantee his arms were at least 21 inches. His chest was huge and full. I mean, I remember, you know, we went fishing on his birthday, and, you know, it's hot. You know, his birthday's in May. We're out there in the lake, man. We stripped down to just our shorts. We're out there fishing. I mean, he didn't look far off of that Mr. Olympia form.
When was this?
This is probably 3 years ago. It'd be like 3 years ago this May. He looked good. He was impressive, and big. It was me, him, and Corey Matthews. Of course, Corey looked great. Corey's, you know, one of the pros out of here as well. And I was like, God dang, Ryan, man, you look awesome. And he's like, yeah. And it was after the hip surgery, so he'd overcome that. And he's like, yeah, I got to go and get my back done now. And I'm like, why? You know? And he's, oh yeah, I need my back done. You know? And then he's never been right since then. You know, and like Branch saw him after that back surgery. I think he had that surgery like in June. I think Branch saw him in December, and it was over in Russia at one of those big expos over there. And you know, he said it was like 5 degrees, and Ronnie was sweating bullets. And you know, those screws had broke out of his back, and he's still working hard to overcome that now. So, you know, it's partly that. Yes, he lifted heavy, but hey, you know,
1-8 title Olympians too.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't regret it.
All right, anything else you want to wrap up with? I think we're definitely have to do a second part to this. There's a lot we didn't cover.
Yes, sir. Just, man, stay hardcore, train hard, never give up, man. We love you. God bless you.
Okay, thank you.